by David Day. Now, it is very windy out tonight, so you may hear some wind and some leaves blowing around. I hope that is not too distracting or too loud coming through the microphone on my phone, but with that out of the way, let's begin. Obviously, I can't show you all of this book, but I do want to share with you some of my favorite illustrations and talk about the world of Tolkien and The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings and stuff. So, as we open the book, we are greeted by this full page artwork here. I'm not entirely sure what this is depicting. I think it is possibly the Easterlings or something of that sort, but this is what you get when you open the book for the first time. We have a title page here, The Illustrated World of Tolkien. Another title page and some distribution rights and publisher information. The table of contents with a illustration here on the left side of Bilbo Baggins. This is illustrated by Lydia Postma. So let's go over the table of contents very quickly. On page 6, we have an introduction. On page 12, we have In the Beginning, which goes over the creation of Varda by Eru, and all the gods and stuff, and how things were brought to be in Middle-earth. Then on page 54, we have peoples, races, and kingdoms. On page 110, we have beasts and dragons. This is my personal favorite section of the book. On page 164, we have lands, seas, and skies. On page 206, we have sanctuaries, castles, and fortresses. On page 236, we have battles, wars, and warriors. And on 286, we have credits to all of the illustrators found within this book. So, here is the introduction page, and I'm just going to read you the first paragraph. I know it's pretty small on camera, but we also have an illustration of Gandalf here on the left side. If you can see there. This is also by Lydia Postma. So, let me read you the first paragraph of the introduction. The Illustrated World of Tolkien is a gallery of some of the finest Tolkien-inspired art from a unique and exclusive picture library that has been created over the last 40 years. It began with the 1979 publication of a Tolkien bestiary, the first fully illustrated reader's guide to Middle-earth and the Undying Lands. A Tolkien bestiary appeared just 2 years after the posthumous publication of J.R.R. Tolkien's The Silmarillion, a book that for the first time gave readers of The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings some indication of the immense scope of Tolkien's mythology and cosmology. Which is true. Silmarillion is very unlike Tolkien's other work, the way that it's put together, and it is a bit of a longer book as well, but it is also very interesting. There's some very cool stuff that goes on in there. It takes place in the first and second ages of Middle-earth. And we can start by talking about the kingdom of Valar. This is The Trees of Valar, illustrated by Michael Foreman. Now, this is the kingdom in the First Age. This is where all of the elves lived, and these are the two trees. You have the yellow tree and the white tree. The white tree here is also related to the white tree of Gondor. So that is very interesting. These are also the sun and the moon. So this is what Valar might have is beautiful, beautiful artwork there. I hope it is being done justice to the art. So let me read you the first paragraph here. The most beloved of the Valar among elves and dwarves was Varda, the maker of the stars. Her importance is shown in her large number of epithets. She is Elendari, Star Queen, and Denali. Forgive me, I don't speak Elvish. Star Kindler. Quenya titles that translated as Elbereth and Githonil in Sindarin. The white light of the stars is also evoked in other names, such as Vanulus, meaning ever-white. And again, I apologize that my pronunciations were not the best there. Again, I don't speak Sindarin, I don't speak Elvish, so bear with me, please, but this is Varda, an illustration of Varda. Now we're going to jump ahead quite a bit to our next illustration. Actually, we jumped a little too far, I apologize, hold on. Let me... Where is my next? I'm trying to find that 5 there. We're getting there, hold on. Okay, there we go. This is another drawing of elves. This again is by Michael Foreman. The Awakening of the Elves. This is depicting Melon and Thingol. So, this is very, very pretty art over here. Very pretty. So, let me read you the first paragraph on this page as well. Being filled with love, Elwë came to her and took her hand, and straightway a spell was laid on him, so that they stood thus while long years were measured by the wheeling stars above them, and the trees of Non-Elmeth grew tall and dark before they spoke any word. So, again, there's a lot to read over here that goes more in depth, but again, I'm not going to be spoiling all of it, but this is an absolutely beautiful image, and I sort of spoiled a little bit the next image on the next page. This is an image of Fëanor. Now, Fëanor is a very important character in the Silmarillion and what takes place during the First and Second Ages of Middle-earth, but that is Fëanor right there. Atop his mighty steed, and that is another absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous piece of art. This is actually I'm not sure if the credit here from Victor Ambrose is for this image or this image, but that is very, very nice artwork. Let's move now to the next. And here is one of my favorite characters from the First Age. This is depicting Ancalagon the Black. Ancalagon the Black is an absolutely ancient dragon. One of the largest dragons ever in Middle-earth as well. Ancalagon the Black is in fact so large that upon his death he fell back to the earth and crushed the Iron Mountains. So he wiped out an entire mountain range when he died, and that's pretty nuts. You can also see below Ancalagon there. Ancalagon is this big guy here. At least I'm pretty positive that's Ancalagon. And then this, I believe, is the Balrog down below that. first and greatest of the vast legion of winged fire drakes that Morgoth releases from the deep dungeons of Angband in the last battle of the War of Wrath at the end of the First Age. The attack of Angeligon, meaning rushing jaws, in the last great battle has a precedent in the account of the great Norse battle of Ragnarok, found in the Old Norse poem Voluspa. I don't speak Old Norse, evidently enough, but anyway, part of the Poetic Edda, where the flying dragon, glowing serpent known as Nidhogg, meaning malice striker, emerges from the underworld Niflheim. Like Nidhogg, the ravening majesty that is Angeligon unleashes a terrible, writhing fire down from the heavens. So, that is Angeligon the Black. And now we will be moving into later stages of the lore within Lord of the Rings and Middle-earth, and this might be something that you are more familiar with. This is the stand of Gandalf inside of the mines of Moria against the Balrog known as Durin's Bane inside the halls of Khazad-dûm. This is where Gandalf dies. As you can see, we have, of course, Gandalf down there in the lower right, and the great and menacing Balrog there. Now, some of you may know this already, but the Balrog and Gandalf are both Maiar, which basically makes them demigods. They were created by the Valar. I believe they're called the Valar. I might be misremembering their name, but they were created by the gods as demigods, the Maiar. And these are both Maiar here. The Balrogs, of course, serving Morgoth. And the Maiar were sent on a mission to keep Middle-earth safe from the forces of Morgoth, because Morgoth was defeated but not destroyed. And then this next image, which we also saw on the front of the book, depicts the 9 riders, the Ringwraiths, the Black Riders, the Nazgûl. Now, allow me to read you the first paragraph on this page, which looks to be a long one. The Black Riders, name given to the Nazgûl when Sauron sends them out on horseback to track down the ring and its keeper, Baggins. They are the first truly evil entities to appear in the Lord of the Rings, in the green and pleasant hobbit land of the Shire. The identity of these cloaked and hooded horsemen is not immediately revealed, but eventually they are proved to be the Ringwraiths. It is only later, though, the eyes of the ring-bearer Frodo Baggins, that the reader is given a glimpse of the Nazgûl as they appear to the necromancer and those who inhabit the Wraith world. After slipping on the one ring on his finger, the hobbit is suddenly able to see in the phantom shapes of the Ringwraiths, their terrible white faces, gray hair, long gray robes, and helms of silver. This, of course, is because the Ringwraiths, the Nazgûl, are actually the 9 kings of men that were given rings by Sauron, and the rings would eventually control them. So, let's go a little further, just flipping through the book. phobia. This is Ungoliant, an ancient evil, a great spider. This Ungoliant is said to be just as old as, possibly even the Valar, just as old as Middle-earth itself. There are some that believe that Ungoliant might even be an ancient entity, just this ancient evil that has always been there. But Ungoliant is very, very, very powerful. She is one of the most powerful characters in Tolkien's mythology. She is the one who destroys the two trees in Valinor. So let me read you the first paragraph of her page here. A primordial monster in the Silmarillion that takes the shape of a gigantic female spider, sometimes called the Gloomweaver. Tolkien's monster weaves a web of darkness and horror from a substance that Tolkien calls the Unlight of Ungoliant. So, again, Ungoliant is absolutely ancient. She is super, super old. She's not even, really a spider. She is something far more than a lot of these other characters. She may just be darkness itself, something like that. So, Ungoliant is a very, very interesting character. I really like her. She's super cool. She also could be the mother of Shelob. So, Shelob is another character that is way powerful. Like, Shelob is stupid, stupid OP. Shelob even scared Sauron. Sauron was afraid of Shelob, so that's something. Of course, Shelob is here on the next page, fighting Samwise Gamgee at inside of Morgoth, or not Morgoth, Mordor. Sorry, the names can sometimes slip wrong. And then here is Gollum, and some more illustrations of Gollum, and some other bits and bobs, but we're just going to cut over to lands, seas, and skies. As you can see here, we have the Ents now. One of my favorite scenes within the Two Towers is the last march of the Ents, and I love the Ents just as entities, as parts of the world, as this, this old and ancient race that is, sort of an allegory for industrialization and the destruction of the environment and, all these different things. I love the Ents. They are some of my favorite characters in all of The Lord of the Rings. I think they're just so sick. They're awesome. And, in this image, they're more spindly. When I think of Ents, because of, popular media and fantasy games and stuff like that, I usually think of these, like, big and hulking oak tree looking sort of creatures, but a lot of the depictions of the Ents in this book, actually all of them, from what I can tell, are these more spindly, slender kinds of things. So we also have this very interesting bit of the world here, and I don't know if that's gonna focus very well. It's not, super focused. Let me try. Just hold on. I think that's a little better, but this is depicting the formation of Middle-earth. Middle-earth started as actually a flat plain, but after the destruction of the two trees, the world collapses into a sphere. So, at the end of the First Age, the Undying Lands are removed from Middle-earth. They're no longer there. That's why they get on a ship to go into the Undying Lands, and Numenor is lost underneath the ocean. So that is what happens to Arda and Middle-earth. And then we can see what it looks like down here at the bottom in the Third Age. This is the Middle-earth that we all know. You can see in Eriador down here, Helm's Deep is there, and way up here, more north in Arnor, we have Hobbiton and the Shire, and then over here is the Grey Havens in that corner, and then down here, there's Isengard, and I'm looking for it, it's down here, Minas Morgul and Minas Tirith are down there. So that is the shape of the world that we most know it in. And then this is an illustration. This is an illustration of the Barrow Downs as the hobbits are just beginning to reach the edges of the Shire. They encounter the Barrow Downs. This is where the spirits of long-dead warriors inhabit their tombs and guard what treasure may be inside. This is the Barrow Downs. This is a part of the book that was not adapted by Peter Jackson. When the Witch King dies, when the Witch King is stabbed by Pippin, or was it Merry? Oh God, I'm gonna look like a fool if I can't remember that correctly. I believe it was actually Merry that, it was Merry, because Pippin was up in Minas Tirith as part of the guard. But yeah, when Merry stabs the Witch King, the only reason he's actually able to do that in the book is because he has the Barrow Knife from the Barrow Downs. It's got special magical properties that allow him to do that. So this here, possibly one of my favorite illustrations in this entire book. And I don't say that because I'm completely biased to The Hobbit and think it's the greatest book ever written. But this is Erebor, the Lonely Mountain. This is where Thorin and his company, as we can see over here, the company of Thorin Oakenshield marches upon the Lonely Mountain to reclaim it from the dragon Smaug. And one of the things that I love about Tolkien's writing is how he was able to expand upon the Hobbit. Now, the Hobbit he wrote as a basically a children's story for his children, but as I understand it, he had ideas of a much larger world, and I love the way that things are set up in the Hobbit. He gets the magic ring, which at the time wasn't supposed to be the one ring, but then later on, it was built upon and expanded. But my favorite little bit of, Lord of the Rings lore is that had this quest failed, had they not reclaimed the Lonely Mountain and inadvertently slain Smaug, it is very likely that they would have lost the War of the Ring, because Smaug would have allied himself with Sauron, and the North would have been weakened to the point that other forces that were in the north of Middle-earth would have also descended upon Minas Tirith, and they would have been overrun by the combination of Smaug and some other armies of Sauron that were occupying the north. In fact, there is an entire tale about the war in the north and, the death of Dane Ironfoot, the king under the mountain, and the people of Dale was an adaptation of this in a video game that I haven't played, but I think it does exist. But anyway, the Lonely Mountain, my favorite part of Middle-earth. I love Erebor. And I believe this is the final image that I have bookmarked that I wanted to show you. This is another image of Ancalagon the Black preparing for the War of Wrath that would see the end of the First Age. Ancalagon, of course, being this massive, massive dragon up here. Absolutely massive, massive dragon. So let me read to you this final paragraph. The great battle in the War of Wrath. The great final battle between the forces of Morgoth, the Dark Enemy, and the Valyrian host of the West that brings an end to the First Age. While the Valar and elves are ultimately victorious, the near-cosmic violence of the battle results in the shattering of the Iron Mountains and the sinking of almost all of the land of Beleriand, which is, as we discussed before, when the world loses its flatness and becomes a proper planet shape, a sphere. Beleriand is under the ocean. So, this has been the Illustrated World of Tolkien, or at least a small sampling of it. I hope you did enjoy and found this relaxing. Again, as always, thank you for watching. I hope to speak with you all again soon, and goodbye